word of the Lord will be the whole of the first chapter of Genesis, describing the first 6 days of creation. Because this is a somewhat familiar story, I'll be reading from a less familiar translation, a more literal translation, which draws out the rhythm and the repetition in the original Hebrew. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was a void and an emptiness, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering on the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided between the light and the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault in the midst of the waters, and let it divide between the waters and the waters." And God made the vault, and he divided between the waters which were under the vault and the waters which were above the vault. And it was so. And God called the vault heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters be gathered from under the heavens to one place, and let the dry ground be seen." And it was so. And God called the dry ground earth, and the gatherings of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth shoot up shoots, the herb seeding seed, and the fruit tree producing fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in it, upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth shoots, the herb seeding seed according to its kind, and the fruit tree producing fruit, whose seed is in it, according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the heavens to divide between the day and the night, and let them be for signs and for appointed times, and for days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the great light to have dominion over the day, and the small light to have dominion over the night, and the stars. And God put them in the vault of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and to have dominion in day and in night, and to divide between the light and the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 4th day. He said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living souls, and let flying things fly upon the earth, upon the face of the vault of the heavens." And God created the great sea monsters, and all the living souls that creep, which swarm the waters, according to their kind, and every winged flying thing according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the waters of the sea, and let flying things multiply in the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the 5th day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living soul according to its kind, the beast and the creeping animal of the earth according to its kind." And it was so. And God made the animal of the earth according to its kind, the beast according to its kind, and every creeping thing of the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the flying things of the heavens, and over the beast, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. And God created the man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the flying things of the heavens, and over every animal that creeps upon the earth." And God said, "Behold, I give to you every herb seeding seed which is on the face of the whole earth, and every tree which has fruit. A tree seeding seed will be yours for food. And to every animal of the earth, and to every flying thing of the heavens, and to every creeping thing on the earth that has in it a living soul, I give all greenness of herb for food." And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was exceedingly good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Amen. The story of creation in Genesis is not about the creation of the physical world. It's not about the creation of the landscape within our minds either. It's more specific than that. It's the story of the Lord making what he originally intended to make, creating the thing that has always been his first and ultimate end in view. It's the story of him creating a heavenly human being. The story seems to culminate with the creation of people, but in the internal sense, it's about the Lord realizing his actual goal. It's about him making us into the truly human beings that he envisioned in the beginning. His first and last goal is the creation of a heaven from the human race. And creation isn't done until that goal is realized. All the details of the creation story tell us how that goal is reached. And so we can use the creation story as a sort of a blueprint for becoming what the Lord made us to be. But the story is also simply a reminder that the Lord's work isn't done yet. All of us here are human, and yet in another sense, we're not yet human. We're becoming human. And that could be taken as a discouraging statement, but we can also hold it and say, isn't it amazing that the Lord wants me to become so much more than what I am? All of us know so much and feel so deeply. We know truths that shine in our minds, and we've been in the presence of love that warms us like a holy thing. Isn't it amazing to think that we're only just beginning to wake up from darkness and confusion? The good things we've tasted can become so much more alive than they are now. Each of us is a masterpiece that our Creator has only just started working on. There is so much more in store for us. To see this message in the creation story, we have to understand where it begins. We have to understand what's meant in the word's internal sense by the primordial darkness. We can tie the beginning of the creation story to a specific state in ourselves. Then we can map the rest of the creation story onto our lives. We read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was a void and an emptiness, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering on the face of the waters." Those words don't describe where we were before we were born or something like that. They describe a state that we've experienced consciously. It's the state that we're in at the beginning of our adult lives, at the beginning of our journey of regeneration. Childhood was perhaps a brighter state, but that brightness was borrowed. When we enter into our adult freedom and rationality, part of the deal is that we become responsible for what we are. We and we alone must choose who we will be, and so our borrowed innocence has to be relinquished. In its place, there's a void and an emptiness. It's easier to see the picture presented in these first verses of Genesis once we know a little bit about how the ancient Hebrews pictured the ordering of the world. The Old Testament pretty consistently describes creation as existing in three layers: the heavens above, the earth beneath, and the waters under the earth. The heavens above are watery, or at least rain comes down from them. And beneath the earth is the deep, an abyss of primordial waters. So the world that human beings inhabit is a space hollowed out in the midst of the waters. That space is made on the second day of creation. The Lord separates the waters above from the waters beneath. Heaven is a vault or an expanse upon which the waters above rest. It's pictured as something that the Lord spreads out over the world. In Isaiah we read that the Lord stretches out the heavens like a curtain. And the earth, too, is spread over the waters beneath. In the Psalms we read, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, to him who spread the deep above the water, who laid out the earth above the waters." And we see the same cosmology in the Noah story. The flood in that Noah story isn't just the result of a lot of rain. The flood comes from above and from beneath. We're told, "And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were on the earth. On that day all the fountains of the great deep were opened up, and the windows of heaven were opened." The fountains of the deep or of the abyss are opened up. The waters above and the waters beneath collapse back into the world that human beings inhabit. So what exists before the first day of creation is simultaneously a void and an emptiness and an abyss of waters. It's a cold, turbid, primordial darkness out of which order emerges. The Lord lifts something into the light and starts to give it shape. The void and the emptiness don't go away, though. They're just left behind or pushed aside. The Lord creates something alive in the midst of the waters. In the heavenly doctrines of the new church, the darkness preceding the first day is described as a state in which spiritual good and truth are not acknowledged. If we don't acknowledge a higher good or a truth that exists outside of ourselves, then we're void of good and empty of truth. We're immersed in confusion and spiritual blindness, which are represented by the deep. And in this state, we have no idea what we're missing. When we're blind, we just don't see what we don't see. Good and truth are words that we know, and we use them to describe what feels good or seems right to us. But in this state, we have no concept what it would mean to be moved by truly unselfish love, or to see the world in clear light. In the book Arcana Celestia, we're told thoroughly external people do not even know what good is and what truth is. For they imagine that everything which comprises self-love and love of the world is good, and that everything that panders to those loves is truth. Thus they do not know that the things that they imagine to be good are in fact evil, and that those which they imagine to be true are in fact false. But when a person is conceived anew, first he starts to recognize that the good in him is not really good. And then when he enters more into light, he starts to recognize the existence of the Lord, and that the Lord is good and truth themselves. It's the Lord's words that flood our darkness with light. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. We don't have to read the Lord's word in order to receive that light, because the light from His word fills all the world, and people can find reflections of that light everywhere if they're looking for light. Even so, whenever a person sees something true, they see because they have allowed the Lord to shine in their minds, whether they know that's what they've done or not. The Lord's words are light. And without that light, we have nothing but darkness. And only in the word that the Lord Himself gave us do we see the light in its own proper form, unclouded. We begin to see and to become what we were made to be when we acknowledge something higher than ourselves. There's a dawning in our minds when we start to admit that a lot of what we've called good is in fact selfish, and that we don't get to define what's good or right. From that dawning, the creation of a human being, truly human, unfolds. Once we become willing to see a deeper truth, heaven emerges in our consciousness. The waters above are separated from the waters beneath. So we become aware of the profound difference between internal life and external life, between spirit and body. The third day of creation represents the point at which we start to do something with the truth we see. This state is described as one in which a person speaks piously and devoutly from the internal man and brings forth goods like charitable acts, which are nevertheless inanimate, since he imagines that they originate in himself. They are called a tender plant, then a seed-bearing plant, and finally a fruit tree. On the third day, good seeds are planted, and something living starts to grow in us. But it's not as alive as it could be. It's not an animal, not something that moves. At this point, there's a hardness or a stiffness in our spirits, because at this point we assume that goodness comes from ourselves, and so subliminally we're resisting the Lord, who is in truth the only source of goodness. Then on the fourth day, the great lights are kindled. The sun and the moon are set in the sky. And the sun and the moon are love and faith. But of course, just as the moon gets its light from the sun, faith gets its life from love. So we can think of the fourth day as the day on which love like an orb of fire, is unveiled within our spirits. The fourth day is the point at which real love and real faith, in their power and their glory, begin to be imparted to us. But the fourth day is also the day on which we recognize the Lord. Because we don't receive real love and real faith until we acknowledge the source of these things, who is the Lord God, Jesus Christ. Light is created on the first day. On the fourth day, that light is given a source and a name. On the first day, we begin to see that love and truth exist outside of ourselves. On the fourth day, love and faith are kindled within us, and they're kindled because we recognize that love and faith have a source and a name. His name is the Lord. The fifth, sixth, and seventh days of creation will all be dealt with more fully in future sermons. But in short, these days have to do with living the love and faith that we've now begun to receive. On the fifth day, we think and speak from genuine faith. So on the fifth day, the skies and waters begin to teem with living things. On the sixth day, we act and live from faith. And so we draw love through and into our faith. On this day, the earth is filled with living things. And on this day, at last, a human being is created. Because on the sixth day, we act from love and faith together. To be human is to be an image and likeness of the Lord. And God is love, and God is wisdom. And then on the seventh day, the Lord does it all over again. We were truly human on the sixth day. And then on the seventh day, the Lord lifts us up to a higher level still, where all that we are seems no more than dust. And He makes us human all over again. This whole story is a story of incredible transformation. It's about all the life that fills the world unfolding out of darkness. Each new day of creation brings us into light and love that we could not have comprehended on the previous day. All of us are somewhere in this story. Either we're in the darkness before the first day, or we're somewhere in the process of becoming human. And wherever we are, the Lord is close. Wherever we are, the Lord is watching over us. The first thing that the Lord does in Genesis is not the creation of light. The first thing that the Lord does is hover over the darkness. And the Spirit of God was hovering on the face of the waters. That Spirit is the mercy of the Lord. It's the presence of our God watching over us, though we have no idea He's there. He guards us before we can see. He guides us all the way through our birth into real life. Where can I go from your Spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. Even in our coldest, blindest state, He is close, because His will is to make us human. He is our Maker, and He knows what we can become. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Amen.